It takes a bit for your brain to die of oxygen deprivation and shut down. So there's a good chance that when you die, you're trapped in your body realizing you're dead, with no way to stop it. Stick around until the end of the video, you might learn a thing or two. Welcome to T2S Reddit. If you enjoy the video, please don't forget to like, subscribe and enable post notifications for more daily content. r/ask Reddit, what are some useless scary facts? Your body produces a cancerous cell about once every 30 minutes. Your immune system is usually very efficient at finding and immediately neutralizing them. But it's very possible that 30 minutes from now will be the time your immune system slips up and allows it to reproduce. Not exactly useless, but there have been quite a few men who have died at the Grand Canyon because they thought it would be cool to take a piss over a ledge, only to lose their balance. By you winning the lottery, you increase your chances of being murdered by a family member, or any other person close to you. You've probably walked past a murderer. You can have a heart attack and die at any second because of a heart problem you never knew about. There's one called Brugada syndrome, which has no physical evidence and most people aren't diagnosed with it until they drop down dead and testing is done on immediate family members. It's genetic, and one of them is diagnosed with it. Happened to my father. We found out because I'm the one tested who has it. My uncle and brother got the all clear. Chances are my granddad has it too. 4 heart attacks since he was in his mid-40s. An aneurysm can happen at any time, to anyone, for any reason. When people are crucified, they rarely die from bleeding out. Instead, they die from asphyxiation, or suffocation. The way their bodies are hung makes it almost impossible to breathe, unless they physically hold themselves up instead of just hanging there, and after some many hours it gets to be too much, resulting in oxygen deprivation, unconsciousness, and death. Bedbugs can survive for up to a year without feeding under the correct temperatures. As adults, the females can lay 300 eggs in their lifetimes. You could be spending thousands of dollars and eventually just get infested again. And bedbugs are making a comeback after almost being eradicated. You have only about 6 minutes of life left. Every time you inhale, you reset that clock. There is a theory in quantum cosmology. It is the hypothesis that our universe is actually a false vacuum, meaning that it isn't in its most stable possible configuration. Think of a ball rolling on a surface having several local minima, dents in the surface, but there is only one global minima, the dent which is the deepest. The ball may be in one of the dents which is not the deepest one. So, it is stable for now, but, given the chance, it will slide to the deepest dent, which is the lowest energy configuration possible, the so-called true vacuum. Now the interesting part. If our universe is, indeed, in a false vacuum, due to something called quantum tunneling, it may tunnel into the true vacuum, creating a bubble of lower energy. Once this lower energy bubble is formed, it expands, engulfing the entire universe, destroying everything we know as is, and creating new laws of physics. The speed of expanding is the speed of light, so we would have no information whatsoever about it before it hits us. We will literally never see it coming. The really scary and really useless part? There is absolutely nothing we can do about it. Part? The probability of dying due to an accident while riding a bike is more than while flying in a plane. Most laugh tracks were recorded in the 1950s. You are hearing dead people laugh. Years ago I saw an episode of Monsters Inside Me, where this guy was doing something outside and a fly flew into his eye. It only made contact for about a microsecond, but it was enough time for it to lay eggs. After they hatched, they started eating his eye from the inside and he was starting to go blind, until a doctor figured out what was wrong. Ever since then I get super paranoid whenever a fly goes anywhere near my face, because of the scary fact that something like this could possibly happen to me. Chiropractors kill more people per year than sharks. A church in the Czech Republic, known as the Sedlec Ossuary, or Church of Bones, has decoration of skulls and other human bones. It is known for this church to hold remains of up to 40,000 humans. That one day the planet Mercury will get eaten by the sun. But in the 1% chance it actually flings out of orbit, it's useless to us because we won't be around. It could potentially, mind you it's a low chance for this to happen, hit Venus or maybe even Earth, and send flying particles all over the system. The reason why it would get thrown out is because Jupiter is actually tugging on it, and making its orbit more elliptical, and may eventually get thrown out entirely. Lake Superior has dead bodies from the 1920s. With freezing temperatures and a lack of oxygen, bodies don't decompose at the rate they would under normal conditions. Sure, they don't look as fresh as the day they died, In fact, they're covered in bodily fat from saponification, but they can be recognized as human remains. In fact, there's been this ongoing debate because of the ship, SS Edmund Fitzgerald, that sank in the 70s, because scuba divers wanted to explore it, but the families of the deceased were upset because this is basically a mass grave. There's a YouTube channel called Ask a Mortician that just did an episode on this, and I really recommend it. She goes a lot more in depth about the facts, and even went out there to talk with a surviving Fitzgerald relative. Just because you're dead, doesn't mean you immediately stop perceiving stimulations around you. It takes a bit for your brain to die of oxygen deprivation and shut down. So there's a good chance that when you die, you're trapped in your body realizing you're dead, with no way to stop it. This fact has been semi-confirmed by people who experience temporary death in hospitals, and recall nurses and doctors rushing around them trying to revive them. Alright, I collected some of my favorite scary facts, from an app I really like called Thunder Dungeon. They have all types of memes and facts and stuff, so it was all written in pictures. I had to manually write them down. There's an episode of Sesame Street that had to be pulled off the air in 1976 because it was so scary. Parents complained their children are screaming in horror at the TV. There's a disease nicknamed Ondine's Curse, which causes sufferers to die if they fall asleep. On August 26, 1968, every TV in America shut down for 25 seconds. There was a murmuring sound coming from the TV, and people reported hearing a demon. In 1994, a man was arrested for dressing as the Grim Reaper and standing outside old people's homes. It only takes about 7 pounds of pressure to rip off an ear. There is an island in Italy that is supposedly so haunted that the government forbids the public from visiting it. There's a syndrome called Charles Bonnet syndrome that has been called a window into a parallel universe. People who have it are prone to seeing bright lights, weird shapes and scary faces. The thing about this syndrome is that all those who suffer from it are almost exclusively blind or vision impaired. When a bear attacks you, he will most likely start eating you alive rather than killing you first. At any possible moment, Earth could be hit by a gamma ray burst, which will extinguish most, if not all life on the planet. A woman in St. Louis was watching a TV documentary about a serial killer who tortured and killed women, when she realized she was living in his former apartment. There's a caterpillar so poisonous, just brushing your finger onto it can cause internal bleeding in your brain. In 1942, a man known as the Phantom Barber would break into people's house while they were sleeping to steal a lock from their hair. He was never identified. There's a fish called a stonefish. It's so venomous that if you step on it, you could die in 20 minutes. According to a recent study, 1 in 5 CEOs demonstrated psychopathic traits. Another population with similar proportions of psychopaths is the prison population. There was a guy from New York who owned a car with the license plate 5V1732. He died on May 17, 1932. A good portion of spiders shed their exoskeletons occasionally, so when you happen to come across a dead spider, there's a good chance that it's just an empty husk and there is another, slightly bigger spider nearby. A standard uranium fission reactor loses a significant portion of its energy of fission as neutrino, not to be confused with neutron radiation that is not stopped by shielding. In fact, the entire Earth is unlikely to stop a neutrino. But that's nothing. You are being bombarded with even more neutrino radiation from the sun, day and night. Night too, because, again, the entire thickness of the Earth does not effectively stop neutrinos. However, the thing is, neutrinos are insubstantial ghost particles. They pass through anything without having any effect whatsoever, except in very rare cases. They are phenomenally difficult to detect, because they almost never interact with a detector, even the best designs we can think of. Chances of experiencing terrorism are crazy low, but a friend of mine called in sick to work on the 22nd of March 2016. He works in Zaventem, Brussels, airport at the desk next to the American Airlines one. Terrorist blew himself up there that day. Friend would have been there, if not for a mild stomach flu. He was investigated afterwards, in case his absence meant he knew something was going to happen. The notorious serial killer, cannibal, and sex fiend, Jeffrey Dahmer, who killed at least 17 young men and boys, was likely driven to his homicidal urges after suffering brain damage, due to a lack of oxygen during a relatively routine surgery to repair a hernia at the age of 4. Pretty much everyone who knew him said he was a happy and outgoing child until that surgery, and then he became emotionally subdued and distant. Many serial killers and mass shooters, and violent repeat offenders in general, have a history of brain damage or head injuries suggesting possible brain damage. Thanks for watching. Subscribe below for more daily content.